All right, I'm checking in again. It's 1455 hours. My name is Cesar Cortez. This is the next log on information that I have coming out to you in the general public. Uh, I just want to go over and let you guys know exactly what's going on since the last few times. I am going to give you a lot all at once. The information is stored from multiple different areas. We've collected it to try and provide some kind of guidance for you. Um, Now, the resistance aspect of how this operates when we have psychic phenomenon is very clear. All we have to do is maintain our surroundings, try to live our lives daily, and resist as much as we can. The sexual assault, the rest of the things that will happen as we kind of go through this are things we just kind of have to navigate. Now, this is the situation. Now we know that the federal government was working with uh, these psychics that infiltrated our government since the 60s or so. But what we didn't realize is that when many people began to accept and to use this psychic ability, it connected them to a greater frequency. That frequency invited visitors. So there's a whole different aspect to this as well. Reality warping is a definite eventuality at this point. What we know so far are is that there are slave trading networks that are located all throughout the United States being run by multiple factions and families. The families that own the psychic phenomenon are navigating to the best of their ability, but it seems that the US government had made a deal with these visitors. And these visitors basically can come in and overtake parts of our consciousness for specific people. There are two routes to receive psychic ability. The first route is uh, Atman. Atman is looking into the individual soul. Now, keeping in mind that Atman, the individual soul, represents multiple different aspects of personality and factions. Basically, the way that it works is if you look at your previous lives, depending on how many quantum fragments of the previous lives you've lived, you can access ability within them. But with Brahman, you can access all of the information and experiences of people around you. So, in other words, one cycles all of the aspects of reincarnation, another cycles all of the aspects of consciousness that are currently living among you. So, there's two ways to access the psychic ability. Now, we seems that when we started accessing psychic ability and uh, our consciousness began to expand past the regular form. Once we gained psychic ability, we did invite these extraterrestrials to come into our planet in the physical world. That's why they call them extraterrestrials. They're actually interdimensional beings. It looks like after they started working with the US government, they made a deal because they realized they were not prepared to fight against them. The US government, I believe, allowed them to take over parts of our subconscious while we sleep. Once that started happening, they came over and decided to start listing and arming as many people with psychic ability as possible. That's why in the media you've noticed things like whirling derbies, meditation practices, books to read. They've been slowly giving people the pathway to individuation so they can access these things. Psychic phenomenon for people who access it through Atman, have a limited capacity due to the amount of times that they've experienced reality. We are running on 7 cycles. However, it looks like in my case, due to the fact that our reality has ancient, ancient collections of fragments that tend to find each other. These collections are known as, I would like to refer to them as the morning star. Every time the morning star shows up in our history, an age of enlightenment follows because they restrict information of the general public to keep them from accessing this ability. Once you access this ability, it opens up and invites the door for other entities to come in. Some of those entities have made agreements. I used to believe that the criminal families and factions only looked out for themselves, but they also have to navigate these entities. So, what I believe is happening is that they came in, they tried to take over and attack these different psychics, which the Catholic Church has been listing most as demons. But they understand this better than I do. They have made contact quite a while ago. The Israeli Special Forces Speaker of House, I don't remember the exact name, actually reported that they have long had contact with aliens. We had no idea. And it looks like to maintain peace in our society, they were supposedly going to come in and not have no wars. But like with any entity, it looks like when they had enough power, they corrupted as well. They came over and they decided that they would come in and do what they want. They created slave trading networks all throughout the United States where they rip consciousness out of people's bodies and push them into other people's bodies. They then use that consciousness to do things while the other person isn't looking. They went, and I believe they do this to attack people. They need psychic energy. They need the incredibly primal anger of primitive psychics. Once they have their exposure and they become that angry, what happens to them is they feed this consciousness parasite that tends to hang around. Now, I've been studying the left and right hemisphere of our brains. Our brains work in a very different way. We allow them to work with us here. Um, what I mean by that is the brain. Excuse me. I'm going to talk over some aspects of biology I found out as well and some biblical information that we need to analyze. So, when it comes to the left hemisphere of the brain, we need to maintain the logical and analytical nature of it. You have to remind yourself. And these are things that we've created. These are called foundational concepts and foundational mathematics. We use words that have the same meaning, but the reflection of it. For example, literal. Literal can also mean within a book or it can mean outside in the world. Double meanings. This is what foundational means. The other is and we also have foundational mathematics that allow us to calculate for all of the math that might be required to look into quantum mechanics. Heisenberg uncertainty principle, as mentioned before. Now, the next thing that I kind of want to look at is what is going on with the operations in the US. They move consciousness of specific people into other people's bodies, and then they have them commit sexual acts. That is a part of their slave trade network. They do it subtly as well, influencing people through biological responses and receptors like hormone imbalances and things of that nature. They can also simulate addiction very, very well. One of the things to keep in mind is alcohol in our country has one of the highest potencies throughout the rest of the civilized world. And what they can do is that they can basically, well, alcohol in general, when it is drank and consumed, damages our kidneys. It is at a much higher potency than we've ever been used to inside of our entire lives. And the truth is that we should be going through ketosis with the amount of alcohol consumption that is going on inside of the United States. But it looks like we don't allow that. We instead have psychic entities hold us hostage with these different aspects of our own kind of vices. They go over and they force us to maintain all of these different aspects of drinking. So if we decide to disobey, they would force us to die from ketosis or kidney stone or liver damage. And this is kind of the spiel. All of us are being held hostage. All of us with vices are being held hostage. What we need to do is figure out a way to resist. I've done my best to lock down the city of Richmond. I've got multiple connections set up between the Teamsters Union, the teachers who are working on giving the information out to the next generation in case we do need to use these. I was placed here as a living function. as a living function to bring balance to things. I was born mostly good. I became mostly good. And now I'm seeing that it was a reflection of what we are in our current society. Um, I had to bring information to the table with a pen instead of a sword, but war will be necessary. The US government has been declassifying information on UAP left and right. They've been giving information about the cultural revolutions that have been going on throughout the world. Nepal resisted against their government. The Philippines was actually killing these psychic vampires by going after their drug dealers and the psychic phenomenon that has it there. These entities, they go over and they feed off of people. That's why they try and make you feel as angry, as isolated, as suffocated as they possibly can. And now what's going on is even deeper, because it looks like these criminal families were forced into working with their slave labor. Their operations were incredibly damaging. I came back and I found that my wife was actually being manipulated by them since the very beginning. She had cheated on me multiple times. Japan has been the best at issuing all of the information through their mangaka. The subtle subliminal messages that they've been putting through their anime to give people hope and insight on how to operate is phenomenal. There is even Berserk, which lists off my personal battle, the brand of sacrifice. I only have a few more weeks to give this information out to the world before they can shoot me. Um, this is because of the fact that we have biblical information from Revelations. That's previous stories told by people in the previous cycles. That's why the Bible, the Quran, and all these holy books are really important. They are fragments from previous civilizations that lived before us. We have to make sure to read them through, translate what's the same, translate what has been mistranslated by kings and queens, and figure out a way to use the information to bolster our strengths. I realize what I am. I'm a reincarnated entity of a living function meant to balance out our universe. And that's exactly why I've been using the political navigation of our society to kind of keep me alive. I've been involving all of the different criminal families, the Italian mobsters from the Five Kingdoms, the African American groups that are located and scattered out by the cartels themselves. Uh, I've been working with so many different people. They have been communicating with me psychically. It looks like I have developed accidentally psychic ability, intuition, rapid subconscious processing, been able to access characteristics of other people I've met through Atman in my past life. Because I am a living function, I have access to all of the previous lives inside of Atman. I believe that what's going on is I'm an old fragment from many, many generations of cycles, and I get to access even historical figures. I just walked around and I could feel the presence of Tookie Williams kind of take over me. This is the only reason why I believe I was placed here. Now, many things that can happen would actually give us a sense that maybe this might be a delusion. However, the one thing that keeps this from becoming a delusion is the hereditary marks that are left on my body. I was born with a strange skin condition. The entirety of my arm is listed off with excess pigmentation, and the left arm is lighter. When you compare the two, you can see that it's actually darker on the left-hand side, lighter on the right. I believe this is what the mangaka in Japan have been trying to push through. Berserk has been a very clear indicator, but there's also been Akira, which is an old 1960s film of how drug use had listed off the fall and collapse of a society. Now, when that happened, I thought that this is what the cycle would be. But I was fortunate. I was born in an age where there were enough good people. And so my arm was actually listed off to the left side. And what that means is that we have a different spatial reality that we're living than Akira. We are living in the reality of Trigun. I practice the meditation practices of Miyamoto Musashi. And I found that meditation and self reliance actually had you to a very strong state of psychic ability. Um, I had accidentally found multiple different paths to access psychic ability. There are multiple hints inside of the Matrix movies that tell you they're accessing information from their subconscious and putting it into their subconscious through subconscious routines. These things basically show and give us information on how to survive. Most of the information I believe was to the general public, but in this case, I think it's specifically to me. I was the only person that can do this. You'll notice throughout history, there are small periods of like enlightenment where neoclassical elements from around the world start popping up throughout the rest of the society and advancement happens at a rapid age. We had to go through 7 cycles before we realized how powerful we can get. Once we got there and now we have all the information we need through these different cycles to access psychic ability, we needed to find a way to refine it. And it looks like, unfortunately, I have made the mistake of learning to channel it through 7 different paths. That's also something that is being represented inside of Naruto, the Sage of 6 Paths. This is the way that I have seen everything go down. I wanted to bring to the table a pen instead of a saber. This is how we fight. And unfortunately, it seems that this movement has already been established for quite a while since people started figuring out through the internet how to fight. They will be breaking down internet communications not too soon. And I'm thinking that maybe it might be important for fiber optic cables to start being installed throughout multiple cities throughout the United States. Those fiber optics are going to be less prone to manipulation through electrical currents. Um, all right, so next, I will talk about the biology. And I do know that this is terrifying. We're at war with a psychic parasite race that kind of feeds off of intense emotions in our consciousness. So, now I know that I'm going to die before the time that I get to age 15. And the reason for that is because of biblical prophecy. It looks like there are certain things, certain elements, certain agreements throughout history for people monitoring the simulation of our dimensional reality. There are layers, and that might be what the firmament actually is. It's not the concept of the earth being flat. What the firmament actually is the travel between dimensions. I believe that so far in science we've proved that there's 10 different dimensions, so there might even be more. The firmament is just all that they had declassified throughout history. Now, the situation will get even more intense and complicated, but at the moment I'm going to talk about some of the biblical aspects of the things that I found. It looks like we are currently living through Revelations. Revelations is happening now, but there have been clever workarounds to make sure that we can maintain as much health and safety as we possibly can. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we work around these prophecies. So because I am here giving information to the rest of the world, I want you all to tune in and understand. We're going to war. We've been in war. They are activating slave traders all throughout the country. At first, I thought it was a sleeper cell program to make a bunch of psychic spies, but I realized it's more than that. We realized, just like looking through on gun control laws, that when we have a select few people hold guns, they take advantage of the power and rule over people. So taking a look at areas like Texas, where they gave guns to everyone in their community, they maintain safety by establishing that each individual is formidable. The revolution starts on the individual. Now, it looks like what they've been doing with me personally is that they've been attacking my wife From her reaction, I think that they've forced her to commit acts of sexual violence, sexual activities with people through other people's consciousness. That's a problem. I'm going to access as much of the information as I possibly can to get this out to you, but I get to talk about the biology of how all of this works now. So, psychic ability seems to cause mutations across all people that it comes into. It looks like quantum mechanical research has pointed to the fact that there's uh, changes to DNA transcription, the electrical sequences that happen when you have ATC decryption between DNA molecules. It looks like it affects that process. I did figure out that the reason that the vaccines were being listed off is because it provided a specific way to expressly advanced psychic phenomena. Mercury, which John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr. has listed in control of the U.S. Department of Health, he has outlined that when vaccines are issued, there is ethyl mercury since the early 2000s that was placed into the body. Toxicology reports show that the actual ethyl mercury does not, excuse me, leaves the bloodstream within a few days. However, what they've realized is that it doesn't actually leave the bloodstream. It was studied under by a virologist, excuse me, the first time they studied it. But then they realized that they couldn't see where the mercury went. They couldn't see if it left in urine. They couldn't find it in feces. They couldn't find it in sweat. They couldn't find it anywhere else. So they decided to look for it again in macaque monkeys that were being experimented on using vaccines. And what they found was that there was ethyl mercury inside of the blood brain barrier. I believe the extra metals that are located and swirling around inside of the brain are actually a connection to a larger quantum device. I think Hameroff referred to them as microtubules in the brain. Isaac Hameroff. Now, Roger Penrose, it seems, decided to back out of his understanding of consciousness. He may be in a bit of a cinch due to the fact that they might actually want him to shut up about it. The same with me. I'm the only person that can speak about this only openly because of the fact that my access to strong psychic ability doesn't actually come from Brahman, which is a connection to everything. My ability comes from Atman, and I'm only lucky because of the fact that I'm such an old presence. I'm a fragment that repeats itself throughout history, and I've lived through many, many different lives. Most likely some of the most important people in history, whether I could feel myself channeling Caesar. But this is the way that it works. Cartels and many other operatives throughout the United States have been issuing and using psychic phenomenon to run multiple different organizations, including those like sex trafficking presences. They transfer the consciousness into other people and then have them commit acts of sexual aggregation. They use it to blackmail politicians. They use it to blackmail um, a lot of different people. Now, I'm not sure if they have accessed me at all in my subconscious. And that's the thing that kind of terrifies me. I understand why they call them psychic vampires. They take over control of the consciousness whenever you go down. It looks like the use of depressants like alcohol also make it so it's easier for them to access your brain. Now, what I've done is I've gone ahead and forced one of the slavers to abide by rules and regulations to keep more of this information from coming out. But I'm starting to realize we've been at war the whole time. And I've been the only person that can talk about this. I'm the only person that can go over the quantum mechanical research that's necessary to get innovation to start rolling the ball in the civilian sector. I want to keep as many people in the research field outside of the target individual list as possible. But those of us who are resisting, who deal with the sexual assault, the madness, the schizophrenic visual cues, I have tools for you. If you read through all of my information, though it may be incredibly challenging, though it may be incredibly challenging, we'll be able to resist. The truth is that we are in a different cycle. Our consciousness has evolved to a point that we need to learn how to defend ourselves through better means. Usually, criminal operations give you the teachings necessary to at least protect yourself a bit. But now, what's going to happen is we're going to establish a larger control and dominance over the field of all of our lives. And I do mean dominance. We have been submissive to a different entity this entire time. And what we need to do is start establishing controls for ourselves to actually get out of this. I want to fly one banner between all of the different countries and nations so we can understand that unity is the only thing we need to survive. If we can do that, we can avoid some of the things that are listed in Revelations and also in the book of Enoch. And I am aware that those genetic mutations in ACT transmission actually, if you access this from a young age, you mutate, you become taller. And this is what the book of Enoch refers to as a Nephilim. Now, the truth is that this is getting more and more dangerous the longer we go. I just lost everything. I lost my home, I lost my wife, and most likely by the age of 30, I will lose my life. But I need to make sure that all of you know exactly what you need to do. Study the left and right hemispheres of the brain. The US government has been giving us hints all along. They want us to study all the information that's been declassified. They even want his teachers to start giving the information out to the general public now. We're going to war soon. Now, I am very lucky that I was born in the cradle of information instead of the cradle of life. Just like the cycles of everything else, there's balance in the world. The cradle of life is where primitive functions of what humanity was tended to operate and dominate over the world. But the cradle of information is where our analytical brains have begun to start adopting different aspects of consciousness and personality. It looks like there are multiple cultures all over the world, multiple different religions, and excuse what's going on with the changes in the language. These are subtle manipulations from outside factors that are trying to change the wording so that whatever you hear is something that isn't. So, and most of you have been mishearing things. I understand 100%. That's why the rate of schizophrenia across the United States has been skyrocketing. That's why gang stalking has been a word that has been upvoted all throughout the United States at this point. There are even ways that we have to try to naturalize all of the psychic phenomena. We're rehabilitating people as well. There are many people who went through psychic torture for multiple years and became inflamed and angry and monstrous. Those people were used to create monstrous acts against people. Child rape, for example. And the cartels, I believe, are one of the families that were covered in many of these psychic entities. And they were doing their best to resist. I realized what happened in Mexico with these camps that the CJNG were opening up were actually the CJNG trying to kill off the psychic vampires who were coming into the planet. I realized that Mencho might have been a CIA agent. And I realized the acts and atrocities that may have been committed by the cartel are unforgivable. But we need the monsters of our world just as much as we need everybody else. Even to get through the individuation process, the process is syncing up the left and right hemispheres, which people have multiple paths to get to. Again, that's what the Sage of Six Paths is. That's technically what I am, but I'm a nicer version of it. I was born with a pen in my hand and a book. I wasn't born with a gun. Now, when it comes to the Book of Enoch, we had a beautiful workaround to make us fly under one banner. And that workaround was that we were going to have the Nephilim, the giants of our world, war with each other. But that war was going to stop. We were going to send them over to hospitals to stop their hearts and bring them back to life so we could technically win over on the prophecy. But I'm starting to realize that after I die, after I turn 30, these entities would have killed me anyways. So instead, I'm going to help with the process to start up the Age of Enlightenment. I'm going to give everyone everything I can about foundational concepts, foundational mathematics, how to use the subtlety of language to your advantage, and how to keep yourself as an individual balanced in your thinking processes, how to keep the creative flow but the logical thought, how to balance between the two and channel with every singular thought. Every thought should be repeated 3 or 4 times because you want to go ahead and issue the thought and filter it through each of the channels. You filter it through the left brain, the right brain, the left brain again in case you miss something, and then the right brain one more time for innovation. You can note your intention. Your intention dictates how much of the information goes through. It's an idea from Buddhist ideology. It's the object and the observer. If you maintain the Buddhist ideology of looking outside of yourself while also understanding the two hemispheres of the brain, you can survive the experiences that you'll go through. They attack people and target them through financial systems. They target them through life experience issues. They do everything they can to attack. And it seems like the only reason that we haven't gone into a complete, total psychic war with them was because of the fact that we had trade agreements in place. However, they have moved outside of those agreements. They've begun raping civilians. They've begun attacking people in many different walks of life, including people who don't use drugs. I believe what the agreement was, at least in the United States, was that they probably went after meth addicts. They went after people who were alone and isolated. And what ended up happening was that we had some of our people go mad in the streets, people who couldn't maintain any of the torture that was happening to them. They made people male prostitutes. They made people female prostitutes because these conscious entities don't care about sexuality. As it is right now, I encourage every single person that is hearing this message to not pick a family. Resist at all costs, at the cost of family, at the cost of housing, at the cost of everything else. We'll lose everything, but we'll get it again when we win. I need everyone on the same page for this. I need every banner under our flag so we can survive this. If we get to December 15th and we can have everyone on the same faction, we may have a chance at winning. We need to force Nimrod to piece apart the Tower of Babel. And we don't know who Nimrod is. We don't know who made these trade agreements, if it was the government or anyone else. But they've been attacking civilians now, which has broken all of the agreements that were listed before. And now we know how they process information. There are 2 tracks to information for Asperger's or people with autism. It looks like the first track, people with Asperger's or stage 1 autism, as it's referred to now in the DSM-5. It's people who can have intense conscious processes, people who can analyze data from the forefront of their consciousness. I think, not the forefront of their consciousness, the background of their consciousness, subconscious processes, subconscious routines. Those are what people with autistic natures tend to be able to process incredibly well. Now, stage 2 autism actually allows you to access the conscious processes that are necessary to take a look and analyze everything around you. You see patterns, which is important in foundational concepts and mathematics. Foundational mathematics is exactly what I had issued previously. The spatial dimensions and warping of time. So It looks like previously four-dimensional space was being calculated by using differential equations that looked at time dilation inside of a four-dimensional space. But what looks like it had happened now is that they went over and started realizing that there are different variables that also change. There's patterns. Uh, for example, area squared, area cubed, volume is cubed, and now for whatever measurement we would use in four-dimensional space, they have four dimensions of space. That would be to the fourth power. They have two dimensions of time. Excuse me. They have two dimensions of time. And those two dimensions of time allow them to access your consciousness at different parts in history, your history. They can also access different parts of your parents' history, your grandparents, and they can make people think that you're speaking to someone that's died a long time ago. In reality, what you're doing is you're speaking to the previous subconscious routines of your dead family members. They do this to initiate and induce psychosis. Please ignore the motorcycles in the background. If you're mishearing things, you're not schizophrenic. You're not schizophrenic. I apologize. I've had multiple different personalities breathe through me at this point, so I change from time to time. My posturing. Take a look at the movie Split and you'll understand a little bit more. Quantum imprints are what I like to call them. When people travel through me, they usually leave something behind that I can manipulate, kind of like a hard drive. When you have a hard drive and you write information over it, that information stays imprinted in the drive and you can recover it even after it's been deleted. The only way that you can actually get the information out of there is to either magnify and destroy the entirety of the system, or you can write over it. You can write data over the information that you had from the previous imprint. However, this isn't the only way of doing that. Excuse me. However, you can also remove the previous imprint of the information by writing over it. The problem is that with the infinite space that's located in quantum space, it's very difficult for them to find the exact location in your thought process where that initial imprint was. And it's even harder when you go into subconscious routines. So, information processing at the forefront is stage one autism. It also in the back end. Stage two autism is front and back. I believe I explained it wrong. I just realized as I began thinking through my own cognitive processes. We need everyone in every family in every faction to understand what we're doing here. We're expanding consciousness across the world. That's why even in the Philippines, people have cell phones. Duerte started issuing out his military police to try and kill drug dealers throughout the Philippines so they can combat the whole aspect of Shabu or meth. However, something to keep in mind is that that is not what they are actually doing. They're trying to keep people from dying. I think I explained alcohol consumption, but I'll go over this again. Alcohol's potency has increased ridiculously over the last few years. I think the proofing has gotten so ridiculous that alcohol consumption in the U.S. kills people. If you take a look over at South Korea and you see how the South Koreans deal with alcohol, they have a high intolerance. And that's because they reject alcohol in general. Alcohol in the United States has a prevailing effect on kidney and pancreatitis. And I think what happens is that they create a dependence with people and Americans in the United States. And then when they find out too much, they use that as leverage to kill them. Because I barely drink, barely smoke, do basically no drugs. It's very hard for them to pin um, a reason on the surface level for why I would die. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to create information that everyone can get access to. But I will also tell you, I'm fully prepared to become a martyr. I'm putting all eyes on me. At least until the 15th, no one dies. No one dies. And then we go to war. Transmission out.